When people hear the phrase narcissists and empaths, they often imagine a simple story of good versus bad, kind versus cruel, victim versus villain. But real human psychology is far more complicated than that. One of the most confusing dynamics I hear about in my clinical work is this question: why do narcissistic personalities seem to become intensely obsessed with certain deeply empathic people? And not just any empathic person, but what many call a super empath. This topic matters because so many compassionate, caring, emotionally intelligent people find themselves pulled into relationships that leave them drained, confused, and questioning their own reality. A super empath is not a mystical or exaggerated idea. It simply describes a person with high emotional awareness, strong compassion, natural sensitivity, and a genuine desire to understand others. These are the people who listen deeply, forgive easily, and believe in the possibility of change. They tend to see the good in everyone and often assume that if they just love harder, explain better, or stay longer, relationships will improve. These qualities are beautiful, but they can also make someone vulnerable when they cross paths with a narcissistic personality. Narcissistic obsession is not about love, admiration, or true connection. It is about supply, control, and emotional regulation. Narcissistic individuals are drawn to people who reflect back validation, attention, and emotional energy. A super empath provides all of that in abundance. Over time, this creates a powerful and unhealthy loop where empathy meets entitlement and kindness meets manipulation. Trauma bonding begins to develop, making the relationship feel intense, confusing, and strangely addictive. Understanding this pattern is essential because many myths surround it. People are often told that they are too sensitive, too forgiving, or somehow responsible for the narcissist's behavior. The goal here is to separate psychological facts from internet myths and to help caring people recognize why their empathy became a target rather than a bridge to real connection. A super empath is not a superhero, and it is not a clinical diagnosis. It is simply a way of describing a person whose emotional wiring is deeply tuned in to the feelings and needs of others. Psychologically and emotionally, super empaths experience the world with high sensitivity, strong intuition, and an almost automatic ability to read emotional atmospheres. They notice tone changes, facial expressions, unspoken tension, and subtle shifts in mood that many other people miss. This level of emotional intelligence can be a wonderful gift, but it also means they feel everything more intensely. Most super empaths grew into these traits over time. Very often, their ability to sense and manage other people's emotions developed in childhood. Many grew up in families where they had to be the peacemaker, the responsible one, or the emotional caretaker. Some learned early that love was conditional, that harmony depended on their behavior, or that keeping others calm was their job. When a child is raised in an environment where emotions feel unpredictable or unsafe, they may become highly attuned to other people as a survival strategy. What begins as adaptation eventually becomes a permanent part of their personality. Super empaths also tend to have strong people-pleasing tendencies. They feel genuine discomfort when someone around them is upset, disappointed, or angry. Because of this, they often take on responsibility for emotions that are not actually theirs to fix. They apologize quickly, forgive easily, and assume good intentions even when there is clear evidence to the contrary. Their natural drive is to help, heal, and understand. In healthy relationships, this makes them loyal, supportive, and deeply loving partners and friends. But there is an important difference between healthy empathy and over-functioning empathy. Healthy empathy means caring about others while still maintaining boundaries, self-respect, and emotional balance. Over-functioning empathy, which many super empaths fall into, means giving at the expense of yourself. It means staying in situations that hurt you because you believe your patience will eventually be rewarded. It means confusing self-sacrifice with love. This is where emotional intelligence can slowly turn into emotional exhaustion. Another defining trait of super empaths is their belief in potential. They tend to see who a person could be rather than who the person is right now. They listen to promises instead of patterns. They hold on to hope long after others would have walked away. This optimism is not foolishness. It is rooted in their own way of moving through the world. Because they mean well, they assume others do too. Because they are capable of change, they believe everyone else is as well. Super empaths are also deeply conscientious. They reflect on their own behavior, worry about how they affect others, and constantly try to grow. When conflicts arise, they look inward first. They ask what they could have done differently. They are willing to communicate, compromise, and repair. These qualities make them emotionally mature, but they also make them easy targets for people who do not operate with the same level of integrity. It is important to understand that being a super empath is not a weakness. It is a powerful emotional skill set. The problem is not empathy itself, but the lack of protection around it. Without strong boundaries, discernment, and self-trust, empathy can be exploited. Super empaths often confuse endurance with loyalty and tolerance with love. They stay longer than is healthy because they believe giving up would make them a bad person. In relationships, these patterns show up clearly. Super empaths are the ones who keep trying to communicate when the other person refuses. They are the ones who research how to save the relationship, who go to therapy alone, who endlessly look for solutions. They bring emotional depth, patience, and compassion into every connection. Those are beautiful qualities. But in the wrong relationship dynamic, especially with a narcissistic personality, those same qualities become the very door through which manipulation and control enter their lives. Narcissistic obsession is not about love, admiration, or true connection. It is about supply, control, and emotional regulation. Narcissistic individuals are drawn to people who reflect back validation, attention, and emotional energy. A super empath provides all of that in abundance. Over time, this creates a powerful and unhealthy loop where empathy meets entitlement and kindness meets manipulation. Trauma bonding begins to develop, making the relationship feel intense, confusing, and strangely addictive. Understanding this pattern is essential because many myths surround it. People are often told that they are too sensitive, too forgiving, or somehow responsible for the narcissist's behavior. The goal here is to separate psychological facts from internet myths and to help caring people recognize why their empathy became a target rather than a bridge to real connection. Narcissistic personalities and super empaths often find each other almost effortlessly, and from the outside, it can look mysterious. But psychologically, it makes complete sense. Narcissists are constantly searching for validation, attention, admiration, and emotional energy. These are not wants for them, they are needs. A narcissistic person moves through the world looking for what psychologists call narcissistic supply. That supply is anything that props up their fragile sense of self, praise, devotion, reassurance, and someone willing to orbit around their emotions. A super empath, without realizing it, naturally provides all of those things. Think of it like this. A narcissist is an empty emotional container with a leak at the bottom. No matter how much affirmation they receive, it never truly fills them up. They need constant refueling. When they meet a super empath, they see someone who gives freely, cares deeply, and assumes the best in people. To the narcissist, this looks less like love and more like opportunity. Where a healthy person might see kindness and feel gratitude, the narcissist sees usefulness. In the beginning stages of the relationship, narcissists often use mirroring and idealization to pull the empath in. They study the empath closely, learning their dreams, values, fears, and hopes. Then they reflect those things back as if they share them. They present themselves as the perfect partner, the soulmate, the person who finally understands. For a super empath who genuinely craves connection and meaning, this can feel magical. It feels like finally being seen. But what is really happening is a performance designed to secure a reliable source of emotional labor. Super empaths give emotionally without keeping score. They listen, support, encourage, forgive, and nurture. Narcissists rarely offer those things in return, but they are very skilled at taking them. Over time, the empath becomes the emotional manager of the relationship. They soothe the narcissist's insecurities, calm their anger, celebrate their achievements, and carry the weight of every conflict. From the narcissist's perspective, this is ideal. They receive care without having to practice empathy themselves. Control is another major reason narcissists are drawn to super empaths. Empaths tend to be flexible, patient, and willing to compromise. They don't like conflict and will often adjust themselves to keep the peace. A narcissistic person interprets this not as cooperation, but as power. The kinder and more understanding the empath is, the more the narcissist believes they can push boundaries, make demands, and avoid accountability. There is also something about the empath's optimism that fascinates narcissists. Super empaths believe in growth, healing, and second chances. When a narcissist makes a mistake, the empath is likely to forgive and try again. To a narcissist, this is incredibly convenient. It means they can behave badly and still keep the relationship intact. What the empath views as compassion, the narcissist views as permission. An important point to understand is that narcissists do not bond the way healthy people do. They do not connect through mutual vulnerability or shared empathy. Instead, they connect through usefulness. A super empath is useful because they are emotionally generous, loyal, and deeply invested. The narcissist becomes attached not to the person, but to the steady stream of attention and regulation the empath provides. This dynamic often becomes addictive for both sides. The empath keeps trying to earn the return of the early idealization phase, believing that if they just love harder, the relationship will improve. The narcissist becomes fixated on keeping the empath close, because losing them would mean losing a primary source of supply. That is why narcissists can appear obsessed with super empaths. The obsession is not about deep love. It is about access to someone who meets their emotional needs without asking for much in return. None of this happens because the empath is foolish or weak. It happens because their best qualities, compassion, patience, hope, and emotional intelligence, fit perfectly into the narcissist's unmet emotional hunger. The tragedy of this pairing is that what feels like destiny to the empath is often, for the narcissist, simply a very comfortable arrangement. Narcissistic obsession is not about love, admiration, or true connection. It is about supply, control, and emotional regulation. Narcissistic individuals are drawn to people who reflect back validation, attention, and emotional energy. A super empath provides all of that in abundance. Over time, this creates a powerful and unhealthy loop where empathy meets entitlement and kindness meets manipulation. Trauma bonding begins to develop, making the relationship feel intense, confusing, and strangely addictive. Understanding this pattern is essential because many myths surround it. People are often told that they are too sensitive, too forgiving, or somehow responsible for the narcissist's behavior. The goal here is to separate psychological facts from internet myths and to help caring people recognize why their empathy became a target rather than a bridge to real connection. The relationship between a narcissist and a super empath rarely becomes painful overnight. It unfolds in predictable psychological stages, and understanding those stages is one of the most empowering things an empath can learn. What feels like a confusing emotional roller coaster is actually a manipulation cycle that follows a very recognizable pattern. It usually begins with love bombing. In the early days, the narcissist appears intensely attentive, charming, and emotionally available. They text constantly, make big promises, and act as if the empath is the most important person they have ever met. For a super empath who values deep connection, this feels like a dream come true. The narcissist studies them carefully, learning exactly what makes them feel safe and valued, and then delivers it in exaggerated form. The empath believes they have finally met someone who understands their heart. After love bombing comes the phase of intense connection. Plans are made quickly, emotions escalate fast, and the relationship feels unusually meaningful in a very short time. The empath opens up, trusts deeply, and invests emotionally. They assume the intensity is mutual. What they do not realize is that the narcissist is creating dependency. By moving fast and creating emotional highs, they ensure the empath becomes attached before any red flags are visible. Then slowly and almost invisibly, devaluation begins. Compliments turn into subtle criticisms. Warmth is replaced by moodiness. The attention that once flowed freely becomes inconsistent. The empath notices the change and assumes they must have done something wrong. Because super empaths are self-reflective, they look inward first. They try harder, communicate more, and give more, hoping to restore the earlier closeness. This is where gaslighting enters the picture. When the empath expresses confusion or hurt, the narcissist denies, minimizes, or twists reality. They might say things like, "You're too sensitive, that never happened," or "You're imagining things." The empath, who naturally trusts and gives the benefit of the doubt, begins to question their own perceptions. Over time, they lose confidence in their instincts and become even more focused on pleasing the narcissist. As this pattern repeats, trauma bonding develops. Trauma bonding is not real intimacy. It is emotional attachment created by cycles of reward and punishment. Moments of affection are followed by coldness, criticism, or withdrawal. The empath clings to the good moments and works desperately to avoid the bad ones. Because super empaths are patient and hopeful, they stay far longer than most people would. They believe in healing. They believe in communication. They believe love can fix things. Narcissists quickly learn how to exploit this forgiveness. They realize that apologies do not need to be sincere, that promises do not need to be kept, and that consequences rarely arrive. Each time the empath stays, The narcissist pushes a little further. Boundaries are tested, crossed, and eventually erased. What began as a loving relationship slowly becomes an emotional management job for the empath. There are practical warning signs that often appear during this cycle. The empath may feel anxious instead of secure. They may find themselves constantly explaining their feelings. They might start walking on eggshells, carefully choosing words to avoid conflict. Friends and family may express concern, noticing that the empath seems drained, confused, or unlike themselves. Another major sign is imbalance. The empath is doing most of the emotional work while the narcissist shows little real accountability. It is important for empaths to understand why they stay. They stay because they are loyal. They stay because they believe in growth. They stay because they remember the person they met at the beginning and assume that person will return. None of that is shameful. Those are human, compassionate instincts. The problem is that within this manipulation cycle, those beautiful traits are used as tools against them. Recognizing these patterns does not require anger or self-blame. It requires awareness. When empaths learn to see the cycle clearly, love bombing, devaluation, gaslighting, and trauma bonding, they begin to realize that what felt personal was actually a predictable psychological script. And the moment someone can name the pattern, they take the first step out of it. Narcissistic obsession is not about love, admiration, or true connection. It is about supply, control, and emotional regulation. Narcissistic individuals are drawn to people who reflect back validation, attention, and emotional energy. A super empath provides all of that in abundance. Over time, this creates a powerful and unhealthy loop where empathy meets entitlement and kindness meets manipulation. Trauma bonding begins to develop, making the relationship feel intense, confusing, and strangely addictive. Understanding this pattern is essential because many myths surround it. People are often told that they are too sensitive, too forgiving, or somehow responsible for the narcissist's behavior. The goal here is to separate psychological facts from internet myths and to help caring people recognize why their empathy became a target, rather than a bridge to real connection. Narcissistic obsession with a super empath is often misunderstood. From the outside, it can look like intense love or passion, but psychologically, it is something very different. When a narcissist fixates on an empath, what is really happening is a struggle for control. The empath's emotional depth, kindness, and authenticity represent everything the narcissist secretly lacks. That difference creates both attraction and threat at the same time. Super empaths are emotionally grounded people. They feel deeply, care sincerely, and are capable of genuine intimacy. A narcissist, on the other hand, lives behind a fragile ego structure. Their confidence is not real self-esteem, but a carefully built mask. When they are around someone who is truly compassionate and emotionally whole, it exposes their own emptiness. Instead of inspiring them to grow, it often triggers insecurity and envy. The empath becomes a constant reminder of what the narcissist cannot easily be. This is where obsession begins. Narcissists are drawn to strong, resilient, emotionally intelligent people because those people make excellent sources of validation. A super empath is patient, forgiving, and willing to invest deeply in relationships. To the narcissist, that looks like emotional gold. But once the narcissist secures the empath's loyalty, a new fear emerges. They begin to worry about losing this valuable source of attention and regulation. Possessiveness and jealousy start to surface, not because of love, but because of dependency. Narcissists often target the kindest people precisely because kind people are harder to replace. A super empath will tolerate more, give more chances, and try harder to make things work. The narcissist senses this quickly. What looks like admiration in the beginning slowly turns into a need to dominate. They want the empath close, available, and emotionally focused on them at all times. Independence, confidence, or outside support in the empath's life can feel threatening to the narcissist's sense of control. Another reason obsession develops is that super empaths do not respond the way other people do. When faced with conflict or bad behavior, they do not immediately walk away. They communicate, try to understand, and offer compassion. For a narcissist, this is both comforting and infuriating. Part of them enjoys the unconditional patience. Another part resents it because it highlights their own inability to reciprocate. This creates a psychological paradox. The narcissist admires the empath's goodness while also wanting to overpower it. Fear of abandonment plays a major role as well. Beneath the grandiosity, many narcissistic personalities carry deep insecurity. They know, on some level, that their behavior pushes people away. When they are with a super empath who stays despite everything, they become determined not to lose that person. Instead of responding with gratitude or change, they respond with tighter control. Monitoring, criticism, guilt trips, and emotional manipulation increase as the narcissist tries to keep the empath emotionally tethered. It is important to understand that this obsession is not romantic. It is strategic. The narcissist is not thinking about mutual happiness or emotional partnership. They are focused on maintaining access to someone who manages their emotions for them. The empath becomes less like a partner and more like an emotional resource that must be protected at all costs. This dynamic often confuses super empaths. They see the narcissist's intensity and assume it must mean deep love. They interpret jealousy as passion and possessiveness as devotion. But psychologically, obsession rooted in control feels very different from love rooted in respect. Love encourages freedom, growth, and individuality. Narcissistic obsession does the opposite. It tries to shrink the empath's world so that the narcissist remains at the center of it. The tragedy is that narcissists frequently become most obsessed with the very people who are healthiest for them. Super empaths are emotionally honest, resilient, and capable of real connection. Those qualities could inspire mutual growth in a healthy relationship. But in a narcissistic dynamic, they become targets instead of treasures. The empath's strength does not soften the narcissist. It challenges them, and rather than rising to that challenge, they attempt to control it. Understanding this truth helps super empaths see the situation clearly. When a narcissist becomes fixated on them, it is not proof that they are finally loved in a special way. It is proof that their empathy, patience, and emotional generosity have been mistaken for something the narcissist believes they are entitled to own. Narcissistic obsession is not about love, admiration, or true connection. It is about supply, control, and emotional regulation. Narcissistic individuals are drawn to people who reflect back validation, attention, and emotional energy. A super empath provides all of that in abundance. Over time, this creates a powerful and unhealthy loop where empathy meets entitlement and kindness meets manipulation. Trauma bonding begins to develop, making the relationship feel intense, confusing, and strangely addictive. Understanding this pattern is essential because many myths surround it. People are often told that they are too sensitive, too forgiving, or somehow responsible for the narcissist's behavior. The goal here is to separate psychological facts from internet myths and to help caring people recognize why their empathy became a target rather than a bridge to real connection. When a narcissist becomes obsessed with a super empath, the emotional cost to the empath is often profound. What begins as a loving, hopeful relationship slowly turns into a psychological storm that chips away at confidence, stability, and even a sense of self. Many super empaths do not recognize what is happening at first because the changes occur gradually, almost invisibly. One of the earliest effects is anxiety. Empaths who were once calm and emotionally secure start to feel constantly on edge. They worry about saying the wrong thing, upsetting their partner, or triggering another conflict. Simple conversations begin to feel risky. They replay interactions in their minds, wondering where they went wrong. Sleep becomes harder. Relaxation becomes rare. The relationship that once felt safe slowly becomes a source of chronic tension. Alongside anxiety comes deep self-doubt. Super empaths are naturally reflective people, so when problems arise, they tend to look inward. After months of being criticized, dismissed, or gaslighted, they begin to question their own perceptions. They think, maybe I really am too sensitive. Maybe I expect too much. Maybe I'm the problem. A person who once trusted their instincts can end up feeling confused about what is real and what is not. Gaslighting plays a huge role in this mental unraveling. When a narcissist repeatedly denies things they said, rewrites history, or insists that the empath is imagining issues, the empath's internal compass gets scrambled. Over time, they stop trusting their memory and emotions. They may start asking friends for reassurance about basic situations, needing outside confirmation for things they used to feel certain about. This is not weakness. It is a normal reaction to being emotionally destabilized. Intermittent reinforcement makes the damage even deeper. The narcissist alternates between brief moments of affection and long periods of coldness or criticism. Those occasional good days give the empath hope and keep them emotionally hooked. The empath learns to chase approval the way someone might chase a reward. This pattern slowly rewires their confidence. Instead of feeling secure from within, they begin to measure their worth by the narcissist's changing moods. Chronic guilt is another heavy burden. Super empaths often feel responsible for everything that goes wrong. When the narcissist is unhappy, angry, or distant, the empath assumes it must be their fault. They apologize constantly, even for things they did not do. They walk on eggshells trying to prevent problems before they happen. Over time, they lose the ability to distinguish between real accountability and manipulation-induced shame. Perhaps the most painful effect is the gradual loss of identity. Many empaths describe feeling like they no longer recognize themselves. Hobbies disappear, friendships fade, personal goals get put on hold. Their emotional world becomes smaller and smaller until it revolves almost entirely around managing the narcissist's needs and moods. The vibrant, compassionate person they once were feels buried under exhaustion and confusion. It is very common for empaths in these relationships to experience physical symptoms as well. Headaches, stomach problems, fatigue, and tension are frequent companions to emotional stress. The body often registers what the mind is trying desperately to rationalize. Emotional exhaustion sets in because the empath is doing the work of two people in a relationship that gives very little back. Any super empaths begin to question their own reality in heartbreaking ways. They think things like, I used to be strong. What happened to me? Why can't I handle this better? Why am I so emotional now? These questions are not signs of failure. They are signs of someone who has been worn down by a dynamic that would affect any emotionally healthy person. The most important truth for empaths to hear is this: these reactions are normal responses to abnormal treatment. Anxiety, confusion, self-doubt, and emotional depletion are not evidence that something is wrong with the empath. They are evidence that something is wrong in the relationship. No amount of empathy can make a harmful dynamic healthy. Understanding the toll this obsession takes is not about labeling empaths as fragile. It is about recognizing how deeply human they are. When a caring, open-hearted person is repeatedly manipulated and emotionally destabilized, of course it affects them. Their nervous system is reacting exactly the way any nervous system would react to inconsistency, criticism, and psychological pressure. Super empaths often believe they should have been stronger or smarter. In reality, what they were was hopeful, patient, and loving. And those qualities, in the context of narcissistic obsession, can become incredibly heavy to carry. Narcissistic obsession is not about love, admiration, or true connection. It is about supply, control, and emotional regulation. Narcissistic individuals are drawn to people who reflect back validation, attention, and emotional energy. A super empath provides all of that in abundance. Over time, this creates a powerful and unhealthy loop where empathy meets entitlement and kindness meets manipulation. Trauma bonding begins to develop, making the relationship feel intense, confusing, and strangely addictive. Understanding this pattern is essential because many myths surround it. People are often told that they are too sensitive, too forgiving, or somehow responsible for the narcissist's behavior. The goal here is to separate psychological facts from internet myths and to help caring people recognize why their empathy became a target rather than a bridge to real connection.